Hello, my name is Reverend Dr. Elise Cannon. I'm the Executive Director of Churches for Middle East Peace. Today is day 45 since the attack on Israel by Hamas on October 7th and since the bombing campaign by Israel on Gaza began. Today's Monday, November 20th. I wanted to give you just a couple of updates, not a lot of facts and statistics. We don't have a lot since gas completely ran out in terms of a number of places and facilities in Gaza. Gaza has been in a complete blackout since late last week. Some gas was allowed in by Israel last week that was limited to being used only by trucks transporting humanitarian assistance. I know that there were at least 3 days last week where no trucks were allowed through the Rafah border. And so I don't have a lot of facts and statistics. The death toll numbers have not been increased in the past several days because with communication blackouts, it's hard to get facts and statistics. And we've been so busy, even over the weekend, having virtual events. This past Saturday and Sunday, I was in New York State doing some church-based events as well. We're now back in Washington, D.C., and the news over the weekend is kind of what I wanted to start with. We had heard on Saturday night that the deal that was being discussed about the possibility of the release of 50 hostages, women and children, with the discussion of that alongside of 50 women and children being released, hostages that are being held in Gaza in exchange for prisoners that have been held in administrative detention by Israel. And the thought was that that could be in parallel with several days of a temporary ceasefire or a temporary pause in the fighting. That was rejected on Wednesday, and we heard on Saturday that that was back on the table. It was reported by Washington Post, and I woke up Sunday morning and the communication was that had been miscommunicated, that deal had been rejected. Israel is saying it will not accept a ceasefire until Hamas surrenders. And then, so not only did that hostage deal fall through, we have heard that there are pamphlets being dispersed in South Gaza in Arabic that are telling people in South Gaza who are already displaced from the north. Then they moved to central Gaza, then they moved to the south, and now they're receiving pamphlets that are saying that they should move again. The sheets don't say where they should go to. And then news is reporting that Israel is indicating that the next phase over the next 2 to 3 weeks could be expanding the war to South Gaza. And we presume that that maybe even could mean expanding the ground war, the ground invasion of Israel into South Gaza, which is deeply, deeply disconcerting. We also have heard whispers that there is no conversation that things will stop over the next few weeks. 2 to 3 weeks is something that we have heard in some of the conversations we have been having. So in terms of what's still happening in Gaza, there are bombardments. I do know that there's been rocket fire back into Israel as well. Some amounts of gas have been allowed in. My understanding is that is no longer restricted to only trucks, that can be used for humanitarian assistance. We did receive news. I heard this midday on Saturday that there were bombings that had struck UNRWA schools, the schools where people are seeking shelter, where there are many, many children. And so dozens were killed and hundreds were injured. 2 UNRWA schools had been hit. My understanding, and I believe it's been reported by Israeli bombing. And there's a quote from UNRWA that says, "I watched with sheer horror reports from an attack on the Al-Fakora UNRWA school turned shelter in northern Gaza. It is just cruel. In less than 24 hours, 2 UNRWA schools sheltering displaced families were hit in the Gaza Strip. This vicious war is reaching a point of no return when all rules are disrespected in overt disregard for civilian lives." So UNRWA, OSHA, the humanitarian agencies are certainly calling for international humanitarian assistance and recognition of international humanitarian law. Our messaging at Churches for Middle East Peace with our member communions is calling for a ceasefire, a bilateral ceasefire that would end violence from Hamas toward Israel. It would end the bombing of Gaza. We're calling for a release of hostages, and we're calling for immediate and adequate humanitarian assistance. Things are so desperate on the ground, a lack of water, not only a lack of water, but a lack of medical needs and assistance. And we're hearing of hospitals that have had to shut down because they don't have electricity, and then they run out of gas for their generators. And so there are people who have been injured, severely injured from bombing campaigns, and surgeons can't operate on them. And so people end up dying. The babies that we talked about last week at Al-Shifa Hospital have been evacuated. My understanding is by the Islamic Red Cross. And so the situation in Gaza is just catastrophic. And we are not hesitating to say this is an ethnic cleansing. When you have more than 10,000 people killed, and now they're saying the number of children who have been killed is more than 5,000 children. And we don't even know the numbers in terms of the death tolls because the communications have been completely shut down the last couple of days. You may have seen this weekend that President Biden issued an op-ed where he made it very clear the United States does not support a ceasefire. And this is devastating news because a ceasefire is the only thing that will completely save lives in Gaza. And ultimately, we believe not only is it in the best interest of the Palestinians, but that it's in the best interest of Israel and the United States as well. And so we're continuing to call for a ceasefire, and we need you to join us in that. Tonight, just in like an hour or so, we're going to the White House, to Lafayette Square. We're having a prayer service calling for a ceasefire. This is a Christian-led vigil. All are welcome. We're very open to doing multi-faith events in the future, and we certainly have been in touch with our coalition partners and our multi-faith partners. We're not expecting to have the support that we've had. So honestly, we planned this about a week ago, and our goal was to get 100 people there. And our goal was to get 100 people there. And I don't know, I just checked, and there's 300 or 400 people or something signed up to join us. And who knows how many people will come. But we contacted the Park Service to edit our permit to get a larger sound system and to let them know the numbers. And the permit for the larger sound system was rejected. They said that people are out because it's the week of Thanksgiving and they just couldn't accommodate the request. We sent this in late last week once we knew that there was so much interest. So tonight we will be live streaming, but it'll just be on someone's iPhone. We do have someone coming to record the prayer vigil. And hopefully we'll have a higher quality video that we can release tomorrow or as soon as it's available. So we're working as much as we can. We're trying to communicate as much information as we can. We're so grateful for those of you who joined our community calls to Congress today. We're still having our prayer gathering on Wednesday. I am still doing a briefing on Thursday on Thanksgiving Day. And we think it's really important in the midst of this critical time to be consistent. We, during the month of December and during the Advent season, are calling on people to call our members of Congress every single day as a spiritual devotion. So we invite you to join us in that, and we will continue to be persistent and diligent in calling for a ceasefire and calling for an end to the violence and to this horrific war.